Titled, "The Man Who Wrestled with God, The Remarkable Tale of Jacob," this story unfolds one of the most profound narratives found within the biblical scriptures. It's not merely a tale recounting a life fraught with hardship, deceit, and personal ambitions, but also a profound meditation on the nature of faith, the struggles of humanity, and the transformative power of spiritual experiences. Jacob's journey reflects our own, illustrating how our darkest moments can forge the foundational experiences that lead us to a genuine engagement with the spiritual. Jacob's journey began under the shadow of a prophecy that predicted a life characterized by competition and conflict, culminating in a defining moment in the depths of night. It was here that Jacob not only confronted a physical opponent, but also faced the core of his own identity. If you find this biblical narrative intriguing and wish to explore more about such teachings, I encourage you to subscribe and ring the notification bell to ensure you don't miss any of our future content. Jacob's first mention in the sacred texts occurs in Genesis 25. During her pregnancy, his mother Rebekah felt the turmoil of her twins wrestling within her. Seeking understanding, she prayed to God, who revealed that the strife between her sons symbolized the future discord between two emerging nations. Jacob's descendants would form Israel, and Esau's would lead to Edom. Furthermore, a reversal of roles was prophesied in Genesis 36 and reinforced in Genesis 25:23, where it is stated that Esau, though the elder, would serve his younger brother Jacob. These events are part of the broader genealogical narrative that traces back to Abraham's son, Isaac. Abraham fathered Isaac, who at the age of 40 married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Paddan Aram, and the sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac sought divine intervention for his wife Rebekah due to her inability to conceive. His prayers were answered by the Lord, and Rebekah became expectant. Within her, the unborn children struggled against each other, prompting her to question, "Why is this happening to me?" In her quest for answers, Rebekah turned to the Lord. He revealed to her that her womb cradled two nations, destined to be distinct and divided. One nation would surpass the other in strength, and uniquely, the elder would serve the younger. When the time arrived for the twins to be born, Esau emerged first, his body covered in red hair-like fur, earning him his name. Following him, Jacob was born, his hand gripping Esau's heel, symbolizing his name and the rivalry that would define them both. Isaac was 60 years old at the time of their birth. As they grew, Esau became adept at hunting and roamed the wilds, whereas Jacob was more content to dwell within the safety of their home. Isaac, with his fondness for game, favored Esau, but Rebekah's affection lay with Jacob. On an occasion marked by hunger and exhaustion, Esau returned from the fields to find Jacob preparing stew. Desperate, he exclaimed, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I am starving." This incident led to his nickname, Edom. Jacob's narrative in the scriptures frequently intertwines with themes of cunning and strategy, beginning with his birth and culminating in a significant divine encounter in Genesis 32:24-29. Notoriously, he negotiated with Esau, trading a simple meal of stew for his brother's birthright, thus securing a greater share of their father Isaac's legacy as detailed in Genesis 25:29-34. One day, as Jacob was simmering a pot of hearty stew, Esau returned from the open fields, utterly exhausted and ravaged by hunger. He pleaded with Jacob, "Please let me have some of that red stew. I am so famished," which is how he earned the nickname Edom, meaning red. Seizing the opportunity, Jacob responded to his brother's desperate plea with a proposition. "First, sell me your birthright." Esau, overwhelmed by his immediate need, replied, "Look, I'm about to die from hunger. What good is my birthright to me if I am dead?" Jacob, adamant in his request, countered, "Swear to me first." Thus Esau swore an oath to him, effectively selling his birthright in exchange for sustenance. Following the oath, Jacob handed Esau some bread along with the lentil stew. Esau quickly consumed the meal and then rose, walked away, and in his actions displayed his contempt for the birthright he had just relinquished. This act of trading his birthright was just the beginning, as Jacob later on also cunningly secured the paternal blessing intended for Esau, further complicating their relationship. This incident is detailed in Genesis 27:1-29, where Jacob's deceit extends into tricking his nearly blind father, Isaac. As Isaac's eyesight dimmed with age, he summoned Esau, his eldest son, and said, "My son," to which Esau responded, "Here I am." Isaac then told him, "I am now an old man, and do not know the day of my death. Go out with your equipment, your quiver and bow, and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare for me the kind of tasty food I love, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may bless you before I die." Rebekah, who had been listening to Isaac's conversation with Esau, quickly formed a plan. Once Esau went out to hunt, she turned to Jacob and relayed, "I overheard your father speaking to Esau, commanding him to bring me game and prepare delicious food so that I may bless you in the Lord's presence before I pass." This set the stage for yet another of Jacob's deceptions, as Rebekah began to enact her strategy to have Jacob receive the blessing instead. "Listen closely, my son, and follow my instructions," Rebekah told Jacob. "Go to our flock and fetch 2 young goats so I can make a delicious meal for your father, exactly as he likes it. Then bring it to him, so he may bless you before his time comes." Jacob, concerned about their plan, expressed his doubts to his mother. "Esau is a hairy man, and I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would seem to be deceiving him, which could bring a curse upon me instead of a blessing." His mother reassured him confidently, "Let any curse fall on me, my son. Just do as I say. Go and get the goats." So Jacob went, got the goats, and brought them back to his mother, who prepared the savory food just the way Isaac enjoyed it. Rebekah then took Esau's finest garments from the wardrobe and dressed Jacob in them. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the skins of the goats to mimic Esau's hairiness. After dressing him up, she handed Jacob the prepared meal and some bread she had baked. With everything set, Jacob entered his father's room and greeted him. "My father." Isaac responded, "Yes, my son." "Who is it?" Jacob deceitfully stated, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done exactly as you instructed. Please sit up and eat from my game so you might bless me." Isaac, puzzled by the quick return, asked, "How were you able to find it so quickly, my son?" Jacob claimed, "The Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac asked Jacob to come closer, so he could touch him to verify his identity, saying, "Come near, so I can touch you, my son, to know if you are really my son Esau or not." Jacob approached Isaac, who felt him and remarked, "The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are those of Esau." His doubts eased by the feel of the hairy hands. Isaac did not recognize him and proceeded with the blessing. Still uncertain, he asked once more, "Are you really my son Esau?" Jacob lied again, saying, "I am." Convinced, Isaac then requested, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob served the meal to Isaac, who ate it and also drank the wine Jacob had brought. Feeling content, Isaac then said, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So Jacob approached Isaac, who drew him close, and kissed him. Upon smelling the clothes that once belonged to Esau, Isaac imparted his blessing, saying, "Ah, the scent of my son is like that of a field blessed by the Lord. May God bestow upon you the dew of heaven and the richness of the earth, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow before you. Rule over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you." This profound blessing ignited a fierce jealousy in Esau, prompting him to contemplate murdering Jacob. To escape his brother's wrath, Jacob fled toward his mother's homeland. Along his journey, he encountered angels and envisioned a ladder extending to heaven, marking a pivotal spiritual encounter. When Jacob finally reached Haran, he found himself facing new challenges and meeting his match in his uncle Laban, as narrated in Genesis 29. Upon arriving in the lands near Haran, Jacob noticed a well in a field where 3 flocks of sheep rested, awaiting water from the well, which was sealed with a large stone. This was a communal well where the shepherds gathered, and once all were present, would roll the stone away to water the sheep and then replace it. Curious, Jacob engaged with the shepherds, asking, "My brothers, where are you from?" To which they replied, "We are from Haran." Jacob further inquired, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson, Abraham's brother?" They confirmed, "We do, he is well." At that moment, Rachel approached with her father's sheep. Jacob observed that it was still early in the day, and too soon to pen the flocks for the night. He suggested, "Water the sheep, and then return them to pasture." However, the shepherds explained, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered, and the stone is rolled from the well's mouth." As they spoke, Rachel arrived with her flock. Seeing Rachel and recognizing the connection to his mother's family, Jacob took the initiative to roll away the stone and water his uncle Laban's sheep himself, demonstrating his strength and kindness in front of Rachel. Upon meeting Rachel, Jacob greeted her with a kiss, and overwhelmed with emotion, he began to weep. He revealed to Rachel that he was a relative of her father, specifically Rebekah's son. Excited, Rachel hurried to inform her father Laban. Upon learning of Jacob's arrival, Laban, his sister's son, hurried out to greet him, embraced him warmly, and kissed him, before inviting him into his home. Jacob shared his entire story with Laban. Laban affectionately responded by acknowledging their kinship, saying, "You are truly my own flesh and blood." Consequently, Jacob ended up staying at Laban's place for a month. During this time, Laban proposed to Jacob, suggesting that because they were relatives, Jacob should not work without compensation. Laban inquired about what Jacob's wages should be. He had 2 daughters. The elder was Leah, who had gentle eyes, and the younger was Rachel, who was stunning in both form and appearance. Jacob, deeply in love with Rachel, eagerly offered, "I will work for you for 7 years, if at the end of them you will give me your younger daughter Rachel as my wife." Laban agreed to this, saying it was preferable to marry her to Jacob than to any other man. Thus, Jacob committed to 7 years of labor for Laban, working towards the goal of marrying Rachel. Despite the long period, it felt like mere days to Jacob, due to his profound love for her. At the end of the 7 years, Jacob approached Laban, requesting, "Please give me my wife. My time of service is complete, and I wish to marry her." Laban then organized a grand wedding feast with all the local men and abundant wine. However, Laban deceitfully brought his elder daughter Leah to Jacob in the night, and Jacob unknowingly consummated the marriage with her. Laban also assigned his servant Zilpah to Leah. When Jacob discovered the switch in the morning, he confronted Laban, exclaiming, "Why have you deceived me? I served 7 years for Rachel. How could you treat me this way?" Laban's response was pragmatic, noting that it was not customary to marry off the younger daughter before the elder. He proposed that Jacob spend the wedding week with Leah, after which he could also marry Rachel, provided he agreed to another 7 years of service. After completing Leah's wedding week, Jacob was also given Rachel as his wife by Laban. Along with Rachel, Laban provided his servant Bilhah to assist her. Jacob then consummated his marriage with Rachel, living with her and continuing to hold her above all others in his affection, even more than Leah. Despite the deception that led him to marry Leah first, Jacob remained committed to Rachel, serving an additional 7 years under Laban's employment. Throughout this time, Jacob experienced a mix of fortune and adversity. He cleverly managed to acquire a substantial part of Laban's livestock with divine guidance and his own shrewd skills. Eventually, under God's directive, Jacob decided it was time to return to his ancestral home. Yet, this journey meant confronting his estranged brother Esau, who had previously vowed to kill him. The narrative of Jacob's life is marked by considerable fluctuations, between moments of divine favor and personal anxiety. Despite the divine promise that his lineage would form not merely a great nation, but many, Jacob faced his challenges with a palpable sense of dread. As Jacob prepared to meet Esau, he was filled with fear over the anticipated reunion. Having just escaped a hostile situation with Laban, he now had to deal with Esau's long-standing wrath. In an attempt to pacify Esau, Jacob sent ahead gifts and his family across the Jabbok River, reducing himself to a state of vulnerability. Alone and physically drained in the wilderness, Jacob was stripped of everything, confronting his mortality without any power over his fate. Amid this vulnerability, Jacob faced a profound challenge as he slept by the Jabbok River. Not only did he have to reconcile his past conflicts with his family, but he also engaged in a transformative struggle with God, a pivotal moment that reshaped his understanding and character. That fateful night, Jacob faced a mysterious and divine encounter, as described in Genesis 33:22. He had already moved his family, his 2 wives, 2 female servants, and 11 children, across the ford of the Jabbok, along with all his possessions. Left in solitude, Jacob encountered a man, and they wrestled until the break of dawn. Jacob's life seemed destined for struggle. From the very moment of his birth, he grappled with his brother Esau. His confrontations continued with Laban, and now, just as he was about to reunite with Esau, he faced the most significant challenge yet. Once a contender for his brother's position at birth, Jacob now found himself physically grappling with what appeared to be a divine being. During the intense struggle, the man, realizing he could not defeat Jacob, struck him on the hip, dislocating it. As dawn approached, the man urged Jacob to release him, but Jacob refused, demanding a blessing instead. The man then inquired about Jacob's name, and upon hearing his response declared, "You will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with humans and have prevailed." Curious, Jacob asked for the man's name, but the reply was elusive. "Why do you ask my name?" Following this, he blessed Jacob at that place. Jacob named the spot Peniel, explaining that it was where he had seen God face to face, and yet his life had been preserved. As he left Peniel, the sunrise marked his passage, and due to his injury, he walked with a limp. This event is so significant in Israelite tradition that they abstain from eating the tendon attached to the hip socket to this day. Given that Jacob was 79 years old at this encounter, the physicality of the wrestling should not be seen as a literal contest of strength, but rather a profound spiritual engagement that symbolizes his lifelong struggles and victories. This narrative underscores not just a physical battle, but a deeper, transformative spiritual victory. In the narrative where Jacob wrestles with his mysterious opponent, it's evident that his inability to overpower Jacob is not a reflection of Jacob's physical strength. Instead, it highlights Jacob's relentless spiritual resolve. Although Jacob's opponent easily inflicts a physical wound, dislocating Jacob's hip, the true battle is waged on a spiritual plane. Jacob's refusal to yield underscores a pivotal aspect of his character, his profound determination. This crucial moment in the story unfolds as Jacob demands divine assurance before he will release his opponent. This insistence marks a transformative turning point in Jacob's life, showing his willingness to fully engage with and submit to God's will. It's a demonstration of his readiness to align his actions with divine requirements, which becomes the key to his eventual spiritual victory. Jacob's perseverance, a trait that had served him well in past dealings with humans, like Esau and Laban, now becomes the instrument of his success in this divine encounter. The transformation is symbolized through a significant name change from Jacob to Israel. This name change is more than a new identity. It represents a shift in destiny and signifies a deeper character transformation. In biblical terms, changing someone's name implies a redefinition of that person's role and essence, indicating a profound exercise of authority over him. By accepting his new name, Israel, Jacob agrees to a shift in his character. This new name reflects his evolved nature, a person who has not only contended with humans, but also with the divine, and has prevailed. However, it is essential to recognize that his victory is not marked by God yielding to Jacob's will, but rather Jacob's submission to God's larger plan. This paradox, where surrender leads to triumph, is a recurring theme in spiritual narratives. Jacob's request to know the name of his opponent at the end of their encounter could be interpreted as a final attempt to understand and perhaps maintain some semblance of control over the situation. However, the refusal of the man to reveal his name maintains the enigmatic nature of the divine encounter. The episode consistently describes the opponent merely as a man, but as the struggle concludes with a divine blessing and a permanent physical mark, it becomes clear that Jacob has engaged with no ordinary man, but a representation of God himself. Jacob acknowledges this profound realization by naming the place Peniel, which means face of God in Hebrew, signifying his direct encounter with the divine. This encounter, therefore, is not just a tale of physical endurance, but a deep, transformative spiritual engagement, where Jacob emerges not only with a new name, but with a renewed spirit, having wrestled with God and survived to move forward on his divine path. From the tale of Jacob's confrontation with God, we can glean several profound insights. Initially, it underscores the necessity of seeking forgiveness, a gift that can only be bestowed through divine compassion. Jacob was acutely aware of his past misdeeds towards his brother Esau and the consequences of those actions. Previously, Jacob had leaned on his wit and schemes for success. However, he found himself at a juncture of uncertainty about his future. At this critical moment, Jacob's survival hinged on Esau's ability to forgive, something beyond Jacob's influence. Yet Jacob knew there was a higher power at play, capable of swaying his brother's emotions. Thus, during a solitary night, Jacob engaged in a relentless physical struggle with a mysterious figure until the break of dawn, as recounted in Genesis 32:4. This encounter marked a pivotal shift for Jacob, teaching him the limits of his personal strength and control, especially regarding the forgiveness essential for his continued existence. It teaches us that acknowledging our vulnerabilities and shortcomings is a prerequisite to embracing divine mercy and grace, which are crucial for overcoming life's dark moments. Moreover, the narrative highlights the value God places on persistence, particularly in our spiritual journey toward Him. In an intense moment of the struggle, when the stranger saw he could not subdue Jacob, he dislocated Jacob's hip. Despite the pain, Jacob's resolve did not waver. He declared, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Genesis 32:25-26, demonstrating not just spiritual receptivity, but tenacity. Jacob's spiritual journey was marked by moments of profound awareness and obedience, such as his vision of the heavenly ladder and his heed to God's command to return to his native land. His relentless pursuit of his wife Rachel, enduring years of labor for Laban, further exemplifies his perseverance. In his wrestling match, Jacob displayed determination to secure a blessing from God, aware of the moral stakes involved. Despite not deserving it, he was prepared to face any consequences, showing a deep commitment to his faith and spiritual growth. This episode not only reflects Jacob's growth, but serves as a timeless lesson on the virtues of humility, perseverance, and the transformative power of divine grace. The story of Jacob's transformative encounter offers profound insights into the interplay of identity and faith. After an all-night struggle that left him physically impaired, Jacob was nonetheless blessed by God. This pivotal event teaches us that our true identity is found in our relationship with Christ. During this encounter, when asked his name, Jacob responded and was told, "You will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Genesis 32:27-28. This renaming signifies a profound shift from his past, a past marked by cunning and self-reliance, to a future as a leader and patriarch of nations. Jacob's lineage itself was a tapestry of diverse traits. The faith of his grandfather, the envy of Sarah, his grandmother, the wit of his mother, and the steadfast loyalty of his father. Initially known as supplanter, Jacob often lived up to this name through acts of deceit and self-interest. However, his love for Rachel and his loyalty to her family started to alter his character, culminating in his divine struggle that redefined him as Israel, meaning God's prince. The renaming was more than symbolic. It represented a transformation into a new being, a theme that recurs throughout the Bible. This concept is echoed in the New Testament, where it is said, "If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come." 1 Corinthians 5:17. This passage suggests a rebirth through faith, where past identities and mistakes are washed away. As Jacob's story unfolds in Genesis, his name oscillates between Jacob and Israel, reflecting his ongoing internal conflict between his former self and his new identity bestowed by God. This oscillation is symbolic of our own spiritual journeys, where we often need reminders of who we are in Christ. Even in moments of doubt, Jacob sought a deeper connection with God, asking him, "Please tell me your name." To which God responded, "Why do you ask my name?" and then blessed Jacob. Genesis 32:29. This dialogue highlights the mysterious and personal nature of God, reinforcing the idea that understanding our Creator transcends knowing His name. It involves experiencing His presence and embracing the identity He gives us. This narrative of Jacob not only illustrates the transformation of a man, but serves as a reminder to continually embrace our new identities in faith, recognizing that despite our imperfections, we can always reclaim the divine purpose for which we have been renamed and reborn. The narrative of Jacob wrestling with God by the Jabbok River vividly illustrates a divine encounter that profoundly transformed his heart. Unlike many who might know of God, Jacob experienced God in a direct, personal, and life-altering manner. This encounter, depicted as a struggle with God in human form, deepened Jacob's understanding and connection to God, far beyond mere awareness. It is crucial to recognize that knowing about God's actions in the lives of others is vastly different from experiencing His impact in one's own life. God prioritizes the condition of our hearts over mere outward displays of piety. The true essence of building a relationship with God lies in dedicating time to engage with Him, through reading the Scriptures, praying, and worshiping with undivided attention. Indeed, one of the greatest challenges in cultivating this relationship is overcoming our own distractions and misplaced priorities. Starting the day with Scripture or prayer not only aligns us spiritually, but also alters our perspective, infusing our daily activities with divine peace regardless of external circumstances. The story of Jacob, who limped away from Peniel as the sun rose, symbolizes this transformative humility. Genesis 32:31. His physical limitation became a mark of his newfound humility, starkly contrasting with his previously cunning and self-reliant persona. Humility, as defined by Merriam-Webster as the absence of pride or arrogance, often appears at odds with the values promoted in today's success-driven culture. However, in the divine realm, humility is a virtue that refines us. Biblical accounts abound with figures humbled by God, reshaping their lives and enhancing their spiritual depth. Notably, the Apostle Paul speaks of a thorn in his flesh given to prevent conceit, emphasizing that God's grace is perfected in our weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:7-9. This theme of divine strength manifesting through human weakness underscores a core biblical truth. True strength and wisdom come from yielding to God's will and embracing our vulnerabilities as opportunities for His power to shine through us. Jacob's story teaches us that our spiritual journeys are not just about self-improvement, but about divine transformation, facilitated by our humility and God's infinite grace. So I will take greater joy in acknowledging my limitations, because it is through them that the power of Christ can fully work within me. For the sake of Christ, I embrace my weaknesses, insults, challenges, persecutions, and trials. Because when I feel weak, that's when I truly become strong. Nobody desires a life filled with disability or sickness just to remain humble. However, God understands our needs, recognizing that relying on Him rather than ourselves strengthens us most. As the sun rose, Jacob walked with a limp, marked by a new affliction, but also equipped with a new identity, a new name, and a deeper relationship with God. God intends to bless you. Our struggles in seeking God's blessings are not because He hesitates to bless us. It might seem at first as if He is holding back, but in reality, He has greater blessings in store for us during these struggles than in times of ease. Consider that God initiated this challenge with Jacob. At that moment, Jacob was overwhelmed with worry about Esau and his approaching men. This confrontation snapped Jacob out of his anxiety and redirected his focus towards God. Initially, Jacob probably didn't realize he needed this intense focus. It wouldn't be surprising if Jacob's first prayer was a plea to be rid of this problem, thinking it was the last thing he needed. Yet, he found that the struggle itself was a pathway to receive God's blessings. The same holds true for us. Continue to fight. What do you truly need from God at this moment? Don't release your hold on God until He grants you a blessing. In times of distress, fear, and uncertainty, God will meet you, though perhaps not in the ways you anticipate or prefer. What seems like your adversary may actually be your greatest support, challenging you to engage in a struggle with him. If this is the case, remember Jacob. There is immense value in struggle. You may not require comforting words, solitude, sleep, or even a sound hip. Absolutely, we need God's grace. When God invites us to engage in prayerful wrestling, it's essentially an invitation to receive His profound blessings. Hold firm in your conviction and do not relinquish your hold. Never let go of Him until He bestows His blessing upon you. God greatly values persistent faith, and through this perseverance, transformation occurs. Like Jacob, today we have the opportunity to start a relationship with Christ by confessing our wrongdoings and affirming God as our Savior and Redeemer. By acknowledging our brokenness to God, He renews us, making us His children, and allowing us to enter into a perpetual relationship filled with His blessings and favorable promises for our lives. Jacob, renamed Israel, found a renewed sense of self. In a similar way, encountering Christ brings about profound transformation. Our entire being changes. Our perspectives, our thoughts, our actions transform. Moreover, Jacob's narrative shows us that the struggles with God depicted in the Bible were not merely physical. It's entirely acceptable to harbor questions and seek further knowledge about the Scriptures. The Christian faith is not one of blindness. It is grounded in the historical evidence of God's provisions. Engaging in these struggles allows us to emerge with a new identity and blessings born from adversity. Consider what happened when God wrestled with Jacob. Jacob spent that night filled with terror, dreading Esau's arrival. He was frightened and desperate, yet he emerged from that dark night with God's blessing and a renewed spirit. All our struggles rooted in faith with God usually lead to tranquility. Sometimes God's comfort comes in forms we neither expect nor want. If needed, God will challenge us with hardships to strengthen our faith. He even caused Jacob to suffer a disabling injury. This injury made Jacob more vulnerable to Esau and forced him to rely more heavily on God rather than his own strength. If necessary, God will impose hardships to fortify our faith. Ultimately, as a result of his struggles with God, Jacob's identity underwent a significant transformation. He was no longer remembered as someone who gained blessings through deception. Instead, he secured God's favor because he persevered with faith in God. His trials became a profound manifestation of God's grace and restoration, akin to the opportunity Jesus gave Peter to reaffirm his love as many times as he had previously denied him. After they had finished dining, Jesus turned to Simon Peter and asked, "Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than these?" Peter replied, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus then said to him, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus asked him a second time, "Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me?" Peter responded, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus instructed him, "Take care of my sheep." For the third time, Jesus questioned Peter, "Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me?" Peter felt saddened because Jesus asked him the same question 3 times. "Do you love me?" He answered, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus concluded, "Tend my sheep." John 21:15-17. God appreciated Jacob's steadfast faith and answered his prayers. Hebrews 11:6. When God challenges us to engage with him, there is always more at play than we initially understand, and he uses these challenges to better us. In today's society, we celebrate attributes like wealth, power, strength, confidence, prestige, and victory. Conversely, we often view weakness, failure, and doubt with disdain and fear, though we acknowledge that feeling vulnerable, fearful, and discouraged are natural aspects of life. These feelings are frequently misinterpreted as signs of failure or a deficiency in faith. We are also aware that blind optimism and the superficial allure of glamour and success can lead to dissatisfaction and despair. In reality, most of us will eventually face the stark and harsh truths of life. Jacob's story reconnects us with these realities. Frederick Buechner, a prominent Christian writer, depicted Jacob's divine encounter at the Jabbok River as the magnificent defeat of the human soul at the hands of God. Jacob's story resonates with us as it encompasses elements we all face: fears, darkness, loneliness, vulnerabilities, feelings of powerlessness, fatigue, and continuous pain. Even the Apostle Paul experienced discouragement and fear, as he noted, "For when we arrived in Macedonia, our bodies had no rest, but we were troubled on all sides. Conflicts abounded outside and fears within." 2 Corinthians 7:5. In truth, God does not leave us to face our struggles, fears, and conflicts alone. In the midst of life's battles, we discover that God equips us with divine gifts tailored to these challenges. Through him, we gain the power of transformation and conversion, not only the gift of surrender, but also of freedom, along with endurance, faith, and courage. Ultimately, Jacob does what each of us must do. He addresses his failures, weaknesses, sins, and pains, directly confronting God. Jacob's all-night wrestling with God only ended when he reconciled with God, realizing his utter dependence on him, and it was then that he received God's blessing. Genesis 32:29. This significant event in Jacob's life underscores that our lives are not meant to be easy, particularly when we engage in wrestling with God and his plans for us. As believers, no matter our trials and tribulations, we are never without God's presence, and his blessings always follow our struggles, which may be tumultuous and chaotic. True growth and transformation invariably involve struggle and pain. Jacob's nocturnal struggle at the Jabbok serves as a reminder of this reality. Even when we resist God and his intentions for us, God remains profoundly good. As followers of Christ, we may grapple with God through the darkest nights, but his blessings arrive with the dawn. Genesis 33:1-12. As the sun rose, Jacob saw Esau approaching with 400 men. He carefully arranged his family, placing the servants and their children in front, followed by Leah and her children, and then Rachel and Joseph in the rear. Jacob himself went ahead, prostrating himself 7 times as he approached his brother. However, instead of conflict, Esau ran to meet Jacob, embracing him warmly, wrapping his arms around him and kissing him as they both wept. Upon seeing the women and children, Esau's gaze softened, highlighting a poignant moment of reconciliation and renewal. "Who are these people with you?" Esau asked. Jacob replied, "These are the children whom God has generously given to your servant." The female servants and their children approached first, bowing low. Next, Leah and her children did the same. Finally, Rachel and Joseph also bowed down before Esau. Esau then inquired, "What do all these flocks and herds I encountered mean?" "To win your favor, my lord," Jacob answered. Esau responded, "I already have enough, my brother. Keep what you possess for yourself." Yet Jacob persisted, "No, please. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this offering from me. For seeing your face is as if I have seen the face of God, and now that you have accepted me so kindly, please accept the gifts brought to you for God has blessed me abundantly, and I lack nothing." Due to Jacob's insistence, Esau accepted the offering. Then Esau suggested, "Let us journey on together, and I will accompany you." But Jacob explained, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and I must tend to the nursing flocks and herds. If we push them too hard, even for one day, they could perish. Please proceed ahead of your servant, and I will follow slowly, at a pace suitable for the livestock and matching the endurance of the children, until I meet you in Seir." Esau then offered, "Why not let me leave some of my men with you?" However, Jacob declined. "What need is there? Just let me remain in your good graces." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, while Jacob headed south, building a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. This is why the area is called South Shelters, or Booths. When Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, he safely reached the city of Shechem in Canaan and set up camp just outside the city. Jacob acquired a piece of land from Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver, and there he set his tent. On this land, Jacob built an altar and dedicated it as El Elohe Israel, symbolizing his commitment to God. Following a significant personal ordeal, Jacob reunited with his brother Esau. Contrary to expectations of conflict, Esau greeted Jacob warmly, embracing him and shedding tears of happiness, thus mending their strained relationship. Esau initially declined Jacob's offer of wealth, but eventually accepted it at Jacob's insistence, prioritizing their restored brotherly bond over material goods. However, Jacob's life did not continue smoothly. Tragedy struck when Rachel, his dearly loved wife, died while giving birth. Moreover, Joseph, his most cherished son, was deceitfully sold into slavery by his envious older brothers. Jacob's final days were spent in a land not his own. Despite these hardships, God continually reassured Jacob of his presence and the fulfillment of his promises, even when the outcome seemed uncertain. If this story resonates with you, consider supporting our efforts with a subscription so you don't miss any enlightening content. Let's join together in expanding our insights and understanding. Reflect on your own experiences. Which aspects of Jacob's narrative do you connect with? How does his journey prompt you to seek forgiveness or strive for stronger faith? Pursuing a closer relationship with God requires persistence and humility. By embracing the lessons from biblical tales, we can grow, find greater peace, and fulfill the roles God has envisioned for us. Thank you for joining us, and may you receive God's blessings.